This Saturday, and for the featherweight title, we have the champ Alexander Volkanovski versus number 3 Ilia Topuria, and we will lead with the 6-time champ Alexander Volkanovski, who is returning off his second attempt at capturing the double champ status from Islam Makhachev back in October. Volk took that rematch on just 10 days' notice to replace the injured Charles Oliveira. That loss left Volk 1-2 for the year of 2023, as he did lose a close decision to Islam in February of last year, our 2023 Fight of the Year award, by the way, and then returned to successfully defend his featherweight title over Yair Rodriguez back in July, and here he is returning again to 145 pounds and what I think, boys, may be his toughest test stylistically to date, and that's because he will be taking on surging contender Ilia Topuria, who comes in a perfect 14-0 in his mixed martial arts career, and with his last 6 all taking place in the UFC. His last fight was in June of last year, where he put on a masterclass performance over Josh Emmett and really left no doubt over who would be the next title challenger. And man, this matchup really just gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. We've waited a long time to see this. I'm extremely excited to see it go down, boys, and equally excited to see who you guys are taking, and we will lead with Brandon on who you got.
All right, so I've spent a lot of time for all these fights.
Hold on. Time out. This is what you said every week.
Listen, I really have. Like, I'm trying to really do my homework. I went back.
Don't tell me there's hope.
Yeah.
So, all right. So this is where I've landed. So there's 2 big factors to me that are kind of standing out as far as this fight. One is that Volk was just knocked out and finished about 3 months ago. It was about that. 100 and some days ago. That's not long, and it was a pretty rough knockout. Granted, that fight was on short notice, but that's ringing in my mind, because that's either just kind of a wash because of the short notice, or that's the start of a downfall. Like, we see guys get knocked out like that and then they don't recover. I don't know what that was. This is to be determined. 2 is we just watched Hermanson go out there and put on a performance as a veteran against a guy who we talked about in a very similar manner in Joe Pyfer, as we are with Ilia. Now, Ilia doesn't have quite the resume as Volkanovski. Like, his 2 biggest wins are Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett. So for me, I got to lean Volkanovski. I think he's got all of the capabilities as far as the grappling, the striking. Ilia's got the heavier hands, in my opinion, but I think that 145, man, Volk's look untouchable. I mean, he's beat Max 3 times, Ortega, Yair, Zombie. I mean, he's done it against everybody. There's nothing that tells me he can't do it again here against Ilia. He's just the next guy up, a young guy, a great, a killer. I get it, but I just think Volk has all the capabilities to shut him down and humble him, as he's saying. But Ilia does have that knockout power. I think that's the way he's going to get it done if it does go that way, but I just think Volk still is that guy at 145. The 2 losses are to Islam, the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter right now, so I'm not going to carry that too much stock into that. So I'm taking Alexander Volkanovski. I think he gets it done via unanimous decision.
Yeah, I genuinely, for the record, do think Volk is the greatest featherweight in the world, and probably of all time, if we're being honest. And one thing that makes Volk so great is his ability to go wherever a fight takes him, right? And really not one Alexander Volkanovski performance looks exactly the same, which just speaks to how good he is and how well-rounded he is and why he's been so hard to beat for so long. But I have a feeling that this is going to he's going to have a hard time getting past Ilia Topuria. I think Volk holds an advantage in a lot of places in this fight. Certainly 5-round experience, championship experience. He's also certainly faced tougher competition, right, including going up to face Islam, which may also give him a physicality advantage, right, especially in the takedown department. You could also argue he may be the striker in this matchup with more tools in his belt, I think. But, man, it's also easy to find counters in Ilia's game for all of those things, excluding, the experience and the competition level and all that kind of stuff. But when you see a fight this close, and we say this all the time, you just have to sort of nitpick, right? And one thing that I just cannot look past, and I think this is a big advantage for Ilia going into this Saturday, are the knockdowns. Ilia averages 0.81 knockdowns per 15 minutes, so almost won a fight. And matter of fact, he scored one in his last 3 consecutive fights. He may be the hardest hitter that Alexander Volkanovski has faced, and it's not just his ability to knock guys down that's scary. It's also his ability to finish fights, especially with submissions. He also currently holds the highest percentage for significant strike defense amongst featherweights at 62%, with his takedown defense at 92% should Volk decide to grapple. So you can kind of see stylistically at least why this may be a tough matchup for Volk. And I know a lot of that is just numbers, and it comes down to, can Ilia go out there on Saturday and put it all together? And I don't know, but we're all going to find out. But for me, boys, at least, in a 25-minute fight, if you're asking me, will he drop Volk when he averages almost 1 every 15 minutes? I think he can, especially if Volk, who is 35 years old, which also doesn't favor him statistically. I loved the video that Volk put out this week about being too old. Absolutely loved it. And I'm not saying age is going to have any merit, but again, statistically it does. I think it was Luke Thomas put out the tweet of from flyweight to 175 pounds, champions 35 years and over are like 1 in...
I think it's 2.
No,
it was like 2 and 14 or something.
No, it's like 1 in 15. Or no, 2 and... Yes, you're right. It's like 2 and 15, and Tyron Woodley were both.
I thought Volkanovski was both.
Volk's got like... Well,
but he's not 30. He's not been over 30, 35 or over. Okay. It's 35 and over.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, maybe nothing, but statistically that's not favorable either. And Volk is coming off, as Brandon mentioned, a pretty brutal head kick only 4 months ago. I will say I don't think a decision will favor Ilia here. I think he's going to have to finish, and I think he needs to try to do it early. So give me Ilia Topuria by 2nd round KO TKO.
Man, this is such a tough one, man. I think that, especially when we've seen all these up-and-comers kind of struggle against the experience, has kind of been a little bit of a theme this year. I do love the promo by Alexander. I think that, first of all, probably the best promo I've ever seen.
That was fun. That was great.
Granted, it does seem like he had a little bit of a backing from a sponsor, but that's just how much, of a personality Volkanovski's grown into. Also some of the stuff that Ilia has been saying has been his confidence is very, very high. And that goes one of two ways. Sometimes you're overconfident and you run into something, or sometimes that confidence pushes you through something. DC's kind of liking how he feels to when Conor fought Aldo, as far as like just that level of invincibility. What makes it tough for me is that because Volkanovski has won so much and beat so many great fighters, it's hard for me to see the skills that Ilia has completely transferring. Because when you talk about Ilia's ability to wrestle, it is really good, but Islam's probably the top of that, and Volkanovski did a good job of dealing with that. When you talk about jiu-jitsu, he does get a lot of finishes, but Brian Ortega is one of the best as well, and he was able to get through some of Brian Ortega's A-game stuff. Also, Craig, training with Craig Jones, those type of things, constantly kind of sharpening his tools. And then even with the boxing, I think Ilia has some of the best boxing in the division under Max Holloway, and we've seen Volkanovski...
Yeah, but Max doesn't have the power.
No, for sure. But you have to be able to hit him.
Yeah, but that's just so tough to compare, because we just don't see Max finish guys and hit guys the way Ilia does.
Right, but we also don't see people finish Volkanovski for the most part. It doesn't happen. Even when you do hit him, it took a head kick to do what happened to him recently. We've seen him get punched. It's just he's such a tough guy. I just don't know that Ilia, because Ilia does have slick boxing, but like I said, he outstruck Max Holloway very easily in their most recent fight. So and obviously the more recent stuff is the knockout, but I also wonder what happens with Volkanovski with what he said as far as, drinking a lot leading up to that and just kind of not being himself. If he's found a way to kind of re-spark that and get back to that mentality, that's a Volkanovski that we haven't seen anybody really be able to do much with outside of Islam, even in their first fight. So I'm actually going with Volkanovski by decision, but I'm staying true to my word with the 8-ball, and I'm going to shake it, and whatever it lands on, that's what we're going to go with. So
I took decision. So
you did take decision. So I'm going to take Volkanovski by 3rd round TKO, and this says without a doubt.
There you go.
So I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I honestly don't know that Ilia will be able to take Volk down. But again, that's where the knockdown things in my pick is going to play into that because, it's one thing to take a guy down and then try to work to a submission, much like maybe like a Brian Ortega or catch him in a scramble. But if you do it from clipping a guy and they're wobbly and not in a great, it's a lot easier to slap something on when a guy's a little bit out of it.
Well, I even think like how you said, like you don't favor a decision. He wasn't able to put Josh Emmett away, and he landed some big stuff there too. And Volkanovski is arguably more durable, in my opinion.
Well, Yair put away Josh Emmett, and Volkanovski did what he did to Yair. He wanted to do some MMA.
The MMA math is so weird.
And that's what makes that's what, getting back to it, man, that's what makes Alexander Volkanovski so good. Like, okay, Yair, you're going to come in and kick me, I'm going to catch a kick, and I'm going to take you down.
Yeah.
Max, like you're this great boxer, you're slick with the hands. I'm just going to use my speed, head movement, footwork. You're not going to touch me, and I'm just going to, pick you.
He has great leg kicks. Haven't really came back as much, but that's something that he does well. So it'll just be interesting to see the version that we bring, and Ilia could bring out the best, or Ilia can prove to be ready to, kind of take over.
Honestly, cannot wait, boys.